Well, hello, everybody. My name is Ken Pearson, and welcome to Awaken Your Inner Genius. I am co-hosting this with Mr. John Bonzel and Jim Porter tonight. And we have these guys that are 50-year students, and I myself am a 30-year student. So we're going to have a lot of fun. It's a guys' night. This is, I don't want to call it stag podcast, but we will call it a male-oriented podcast because that's what it will be. So we'll see that side, and we'll be looking forward to some of the comments, especially from the female energy. We're going to try a little different format tonight. We're going to open up with a meditation, and then we're going to allow questions. So while we meditate, you might want to think of any questions you might have from last week or current questions that might be there today that you'd like to run by our board members here. And we will now just kind of enter into a quiet space. So as we talk about meditation, it's concentration and decentration. And so we're going to do the opposite of concentrating, and we're going to decentrate. So I'm going to say one of those things from the Divine Iliad that is an invocation to meditation. It's not a long one, but it's when I say these words, I want you to think of the words, the context of the words, the meaning of the words, the deeper meaning, not just the superficial part or the sense part of it, but the deeper meaning behind it. And it goes like this. When we enter into that meditative state, it's an unwinding of our thinking. So it's not a thinking process, it's a desiring. So we use desire to enter that state of stillness. And the desire is to be one with God, knowing that the state of God's mind is a perpetual state of ecstasy. So to get there, we must connect to that ecstasy, that inner ecstasy within us all. There's an inner knowing and the inner ecstasy. You find it when you see a beautiful flower. You look at the beautiful ocean, and you look at the omnipresence of the ocean, and you see how ever present it is. And that state of mind that created that is a state of love. And that state of mind is a perpetual state of ecstasy. So we're going to unwind and just slow down, let your thoughts get longer and longer as you decentrate to stillness by desire. And let these words ferment inside of you. Think of their deeper meaning. Don't just focus on the words. And the Divine Iliad, it states in there, the glory of thy anointing light descends upon me. My soul quickeneth as that light descends upon me. Thy light is all around me. Thy light shines through me. That light encompasses me. I am dissolved in thy light. My light and thy light have become one. I am in thy light, knowing thy light. And here I say, be thou with me, so that I would not be myself alone. So I'll say it one more time to just think of the inner meaning of those words. My soul quickeneth as the glory of thy anointing light descends upon me. Thy light is all around me. Thy light shines through me. I am encompassed by thy light. I am dissolved by thy light. I'm in thy light, and my light have become one. I am immersed in thy light. I am in thy light, knowing thy light. And here I say, be with me, so that I would not be myself alone. Just let that set in for a minute. Not be myself alone, but I'm connected to that inner source within me right now by desire. And I connect to the ecstasy of that mind, that omniscient mind, that's ecstatic, but to know all things, to be all present, and to have all power. So we'll take one more minute to just be quiet and let those thoughts get longer and longer. Decentrate by desire. We don't think, we desire. Okay, come on back. It's for that moment of just stillness where I can let all that thinking go and unwind and forget my body for a moment. That's what meditation is about. It's about no longer living in the body. The body is almost apart from us. That's why I call it daydreaming almost, where we're not thinking of our body. So good stuff. And we are going to open it up now, as I said in the beginning, to any questions that people might have from last week or any current questions you have right now. Just in general, does anybody have any questions they want to ask about last week's lessons or anything else? I'll give you a minute to put that in the comments, and James will let us know what we have. If we have anything, all you questionnaires. Okay, then we're going to start on page 171. We are on lesson number 9. And I'm going to go ahead and have Mr. Bonzel open us up here with the very first paragraph on 171. And I think we're going to go into, we're going to go into 172. So just go ahead and read both those paragraphs, and then we'll talk on those.
Very good. Higher knowledge of the science of man, a necessary prelude to explain its meaning. The next 12 lessons will be devoted to giving you a more intensive comprehension of the higher knowledge of God's invisible universe and your physical and spiritual relation to it. These lessons are preparation for the knowledge of what constitutes life, death, and immortality, and of that unawakened light within man, which utterly transforms every man within whom that light is awakened into a superior being. I'll get you to scroll down, James. It is a strange fact, but tens of thousands are now seeking higher knowledge of the light, which indicates a transition condition in the human race during the last 3 generations. By higher knowledge, we mean cosmic knowledge. You are one of these who seek that higher knowledge, which lies dormant in all human beings, for you would not have desired these lessons, which are awakening that knowledge within you as you are ready for it. As proof of that fact, our writings and teachings of higher knowledge are meaningless to fully 9 out of every 10 people, which indicates that perhaps less than 10% of the enlightened people on the earth are inwardly driven to seek and find that inner cosmic something which their souls desire. That means that fully 90% of humans have not yet begun to awaken their spiritual, I lost my spot there, James. Awaken their spiritual and intellectual natures. The few among the many who are seeking are intensive and hungry for that unknown light, which is awakening in them. They feel that craving within them and seek it in many places, in many religions and cults, and in many diverse teachings.
Okay, John, you want to share on that?
Yeah, man. Well, here are the Russells. What they're doing is they're laying the foundation. I'm not sure if those percentages have increased since the Russells wrote the home study course. You know, the first edition was 51. And this third edition, I think, was 53 or 57 revised. But anyway, I don't think those numbers have changed. And I think, Ken, your history background is indicative of those numbers, studying the Russell teachings for 28 years privately and never really finding someone you could engage and have a higher conversation with. Me, other than Mr. Porter there, I never found anybody to converse with. And then to have spent time with Leo Russell, the author of a co-author of the home study course, what a wonderful thing that was. It was like, oh, wow. It's like I found one of my own. And it's a wonderful feeling. And I hope those that are listening can seek out like-minded individuals and inspire each other. So that's where we are. 90%, like I said, 90% of the world could care less. They want to know what the next meal is going to be.
Yeah. All right, Jim, would you like to share on that?
Yeah, well, let's look at the bright side of it. There's roughly 8.5 billion people on the planet. That means there's 850 million people enlightened or seeking the light on the planet, and that's enough to leaven any loaf. So I think that and I think John's right. It is stepping up as we move further and further into the Aquarian age, and we become less distracted by body needs and desires, and become more mental and more aware of the thoughts and patterns around us. We all call it the Great Awakening, and it is, and it's almost impossible to miss that. So yes, the Russells came along exactly when they needed to, and gave us exactly the knowledge we needed to know, and that's not passing judgment on the 9%, the 90% that are not awakened. It's not yet their time. They will awaken. So what you do is you share this knowledge to the best of your knowledge with anybody that will take it, and don't worry about the unawakened. They'll get around, and try not to judge them too harshly. They literally, well, Christ said it best: "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do."
Very good. All right, that's and that's what we're talking about is if you're here on this podcast, you're one out of 10, and I think those numbers probably have not changed, if anything, because of now that when this was written, they called it the radio age. Now we're in the electronic age. We have definitely transformed externally. In a sense world, we're so evolved on a scientific level, it's kind of hard to see. And not only that, it's difficult to see, you don't see often the spiritual person leading as opposed to the material person leading. And that's why, as John said, it's hard to find people like-minded, but that's what this podcast is about unifying like-minded people. So if you're here, it's not by mistake. Stick it out. There is so much to get from this, but it is a building process. It's just like anything of quality. It's built. It's not just presented. You don't just hit a light switch and all of a sudden it's on. Matter of fact, as we're going to hear and you're going to read about, if you get too much of this God awakening too fast, it can short circuit you. You get into emotionalism, you start being a zealot, and then you're starting to tell people you got to read this and forcing this people down people's throat, and you can't counsel someone that doesn't ask you for counsel. That's really the golden rule. So I appreciate that. So Jim, why don't you read down there 172, last paragraph there. It is because.
It is because the few who seek never know just what it is that they seek, that we must make its meaning clear to you so that you will better comprehend the import of the coming 12 lessons. Very few of the most enlightened people of the world have the slightest knowledge of what higher knowledge means. They would not understand you if you said to them that higher knowledge comes from cosmic thinking toward one's inner immortal mind self, as opposed to the conclusions which we call knowledge, and the conclusions we call knowledge, which come from outer sensing by the mortal brain self. The human race, pardon me? The human race, okay. The human race has not yet advanced to the stage where even world intelligentsia would comprehend its meaning. That is strange, but it is demonstrably true, for the human race is still in its infancy. Well,
yeah, you want to share on that, Jim?
Yeah, well, it is, and this is the saving grace, and I'm going to really push this throughout these lessons, is this transition into the Aquarian age. That's the saving grace for those that need guidance as they awaken to the light within them. Without that impulse on a stellar scale, it would be far too difficult for people who are awakening to the light within them to function on the planet as it is. But with this new awakening coming, it's giving us the ability to be aware that we are here in group, in mass. The awakening people on the planet are awakening in group, in mass. And that is going to be the salvation of humanity. That's going to be an amazing, uplifting thing that will take place. So you're not leaving the others behind. You're going forward to lead the way.
John, you got anything on that?
Well, I was just thinking that Jim hit it, that it's, don't think that we're leaving people out, and it's not a good thing, bad thing, it's not a positive thing, it's not a negative thing. It just is. It's a state of awareness. 10% of the population has a desire within them to know and obtain a higher understanding. And so where do you find it? Well, some people don't need any literature at all. They can sit in front of a sunrise or a sunset, listen to some waves of the ocean, listen to the birds singing in a jungle or a waterfall. Light is light, and that inner light comes to you wherever you can find some stillness and silence. So, but the written word, this is the accelerated portion, if you will.
There
and you
you
can
go.
take it one word at a time. And like Jim said, you don't want to get zapped, all at one time. And that's the beauty of these teachings. It's black and white, double space for a reason, so that you can pause for that silence, that black spot in between each word. So that's what I would comment on in regard to that.
Very good. Yeah, I find it fascinating that it says very few of the most enlightened people of the world, back on 172, James, there, very few, in case you guys want to see it, very bottom there. There you go. Very few of the most enlightened people of the world have the slightest knowledge of what higher knowledge means. You get that? That's a pretty heavy statement, saying that even people that are enlightened don't really know don't have the slightest knowledge of what higher knowledge really means. So as John is saying there, that there are people that can really connect to nature and really appreciate it and talk to that quiet self and be in the light. But it's telling us that they don't know. It doesn't mean you know what higher knowledge means. And I really like what John just said there. This home study course is what takes you to higher knowledge. It takes you out of, it combines meditation with scientific knowledge, nature's knowledge, nature science, not man science. This is natural science, of law of science. So it's all about nature. So don't let science baffle you here, because we're just going to talk about nature. That's the science when we talk about here, which is so beautiful. Natural law of science is really beautiful thing in that, the laws are set. There's nothing, that you can violate. All men shall come to God. It's the agony of those who wait. That is the truth. We all, and remember this, it's written throughout this home study course, is that we all find our creator, our light, in isolation, solitude. It's not necessarily a communion thing. You find it in solitude and in isolation. That's where every man and woman finds God, in isolation. If you're going to find it within yourself, think about it. You're going to need some solitude or isolation time where nothing else is distracting you, and you're doing things in that manner so you can commune with God actively as much as you commune with God in meditation. It's one and the same. You should be in a constant state of meditation is the idea. All right, let's go to 174. And John, you want to read the first paragraph there?
Well, James said that we had a question from our audience.
Okay, James, what's that question? Thank you very much. Oh, geez, I don't have the comments up. Sorry, James. Hold on. Let me get my comments. I told you this was not my forte. This is what we need Kimberly for. Okay. What's the question, James? Yes. Put it on the screen. There it is. Okay. Karen Mahan. How does the earth in its magnetism become known in her magnificence as we recognize the light as ecstatic and the creator?
Can I take that?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Anyway, Karen, the earth is a physical thing. And I know you want to endow it and, with these natural qualities, these human qualities. And it is of the light. Okay. And yes, the earth is a magnificent thing, but the light that makes up the earth, that makes up us, that makes up everything that is visible in the universe is the light of the Creator. So try not to get too caught up on the physical side. Just know that the undivided light of God is the essence of all things. And yes, the earth is a magnificent planet, just like the sun is great in its magnificence, and the rings of Saturn and so on, and the firmament of the sky at night. So that's how I would address Karen's question.
Very good. Very good. Jim, you got something for that?
Nope, I agree with John. We want to walk that fine line between having ecstatic joy in the beauty of God's creation, but don't reach a point where we worship God's creation. Remember, thou shalt have no other gods before me. So it's a fine line. So seek the Creator, and all knowledge about all earthly embodiments, stellar or down to mere corpuscular units, will become known to you, and you can enjoy their beauty and their grace, but not become lost in the worship of them. If I'm understanding your question right now, if I'm not understanding your question right, Karen, please restate it and correct us.
Yeah, I would definitely think that what we're talking about is the undivided light is not visible like the luminescence of the sun. Sometimes we confuse luminescence as light. That's not light. That's reproduction. That's the speed of reproduction, and it's reflective particles in motion. The undivided light of God is not visible by the senses. It can only be known by the inner mind. And so, when we're talking about magnetism, you're talking about the expansion level of Earth. So you're talking about the mother side, which is the death cycle of Earth, which is where, if I correct your magnetism, right? And when we're talking gravitation, now you're talking about the male side of Earth. So Earth has two sides to it, and centering Earth is the northern pole, and the outer part of Earth is the southern half. So in terms of that, those are effects, like Jim and John are saying. When we just focus on the light of God's mind, it's what caused that. Is that male-female interaction creates that magnetism and the gravitation. It's not just one side or one pole. And the majesty of the female side certainly can be appreciated, the blue half and the expanding cycle, which is what magnetism is. I hope that answers your question. So if you have any more, please feel free to ask. I appreciate the question. Does that answer your question there?
Yes. May I? I feel as though I just would like to make a correction in your vocabulary, if I may.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Gravity is not the opposite of the magnetic female. Okay.
Magnetism, gravitation is not the opposite of magnetism, huh?
No, sir. Gravity is in of itself, that is God. That's the fulcrum.
That's the desire.
The inner compression. So the center of the earth is the male. The crust in the outer part of the planet is the female.
Right.
That is the magnetism. That is everything coming to life, coming forth, coming and going, and so on. And so forgive me for correcting you, but I just want to make sure that we know that gravity is the fulcrum, and that is where God is, and all things emanate from.
That's what I thought I was saying, but maybe it didn't sound like that. So, but I understand it that way. I'll give you that much, but I apologize for the bad translation. So, all right. So let's go to 174 and read the first paragraph there, Bonzo. Why don't you go ahead and read that, Mr. Bonzo?
All righty. Less than 200 geniuses have appeared among men since the beginning of man, and not more than 30 or 40 illuminates. To these we owe what culture the world possesses today, yet our whole educational system is opposing their development, and our society as a whole has leaned more to their crucifixion than to glorifying them. It is most unfortunate that humans do not realize this sorry fact. For as long as mankind neglects to honor his geniuses who are engaged in the arts of peace and glorifies its heroes who are most proficient in the arts of war, the human race will continue to suffer the agonies of its own making. Now, that to me, Ken, is a staggering statement.
Yeah.
That in the course of human history, 200 geniuses have made themselves known, and 30 40 illuminates. And I think that what we should do is to help people along, Jim and Ken, Maurice Buck and his book, Cosmic Consciousness, he did great research into what he felt were those that had experienced illumination. So that will help you identify a few of them. I've been fortunate in my lifetime to know 2 illuminates. So it's a rare thing. But the sad part is that our educational system today, for the kid staring out the window and the kid that, maybe is quiet, must be something wrong with him. Yeah, there's something wrong with him. All right. He's talking to God in the silence. And he's learning more in that gaze out the window than he ever will in the books that he's reading. But that's where we are. And we will transform. We will get there. And like they said, we're in our infancy. Be patient. We got a long way to go, and we're just arriving at that stage of cosmic consciousness. And so we'll one page at a time, one day at a time, Ken.
One paragraph at a time, even one sentence at a time. The space is in between. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes,
Jim,
sir.
you got something on that?
On what?
On what was just read, brother?
Well, yeah, it's John's putting it right when he talks about it. What we need to do is wake up the people that are on the planet that are here to do the waking up. In the process of waking up in mass themselves, lift the whole. That will start to put the question in the minds of those that are not fully awake: is this the right thing to do? And it also make us aware of the fact that when we allow people to rise to positions of authority and power in all levels of our government, we have to hold them to a high standard, and we have to be willing to divorce ourselves from all parties and affiliates, and hold them to doing the right thing. Look at what they vote on, see if they're supporting the people, and these are the ways we'll change the people, get the people out of office that want to go to war at the drop of a hat, and put people in office that want to seek peace. And it's a transition, and it's happening. Our whole nation is part of that transition in the last 200 years. There was nothing on earth like our nation 200 years ago. And now we're going through trials to see if we can maintain, what the founding fathers gave us. It's all light, it's all truth, and there is an evolution going on. And John would be the first one to tell you, patience is not my high point, but that's what we need to do, is have love and patience for humanity as they evolve, and then seek to commune with God for our own evolvement.
Ken, if I may, I would like to add something to this paragraph, and to point out to our audience is that look at the grandeur of some of the great architecture that exists in the world. Current and past civilizations, right? Look at the artwork, music, and culture. Culture is what separates mankind from the animal kingdom. And so when you look like for example, in DC, and if you look at some of our wonderful buildings and how beautiful they are, and that's why people find inspiration by going there. They see the magnificence of these buildings and how they were created and so on. So that is a measuring stick to know where you are. And it was interesting. I was, I don't know who I was talking to or listening to. And, there was a movement in architecture to simplify the world with flat buildings, flat roofs, flat walls, flat everything, and to take, dimension and beauty and creativity out of it. So, but I think we've reached a transition point in that. You take a city like Dubai, and all the major cities of the world, you can see there is an evolution. There is a higher creativity unfolding. So, but anyway, I just wanted to point out that those few people, so what is it? 230 people is what has given the world the culture as it knows today.
Yeah. And they weren't known until they were crucified. Then they became geniuses. It was after. Look at Van Gogh. Look at You know, when you look at the people that just died in poverty and they were the greatest genius. Tesla died in a hotel room, man. How lonely is
Yes.
that? You know, and instead of being revered and appreciated, they were looked at as freaks and unattainable. You know, you're born with it. Nobody's born with anything. We desire it. You have to desire it. We all have Beethoven. We all have Mozart inside of us. It's just the desire of Beethoven and Mozart has demonstrated their deep connection to that musical source. We all have that capacity to access that source. All music exists in one place. All
Yes.
idea exists in one place, and that's in the mind of God. That's why meditation and what we're talking about sounds repetitive, but it really isn't. It's layers and layers as you seep into it. You know, this information is like a tea. You know, you got to seep in it for a while before it really get it. And as you live it, it becomes more understandable. But if you don't apply what we're talking about for your own self, then you're not going to have it. The application comes in. Right? My mind goes in the gutter. I got to get back to rhythmic balance interchange. We're talking about thought life here. Thought life becomes so important, and most people don't really have a good thought life. They have a sense-oriented thought life. Very few think from the centering mind of beauty, nature, and stay in that omnipresent place, right? In nature and always connected to the source. That's what we're striving for. And where there is the ultimate goal is there's no separation. The measuring stick is how much did I desire to be one with God today? So as you desire to be one with God more and more every day, you're going to look up one day and you're going to realize I and the Father am one. We are one. I realize I can see my oneness.
I would like to add a little or bring a little cosmic levity to our conversation this evening.
Liven it up, big boy.
Now, those that have a chance to ever visit the museum and to be able to see the embodiment of what Walter Russell brought to the world, you know, and God said to him, if man needs science, I'll make you the master scientist. If man needs art, you know, if you want to be a writer, so on and so forth. And he mastered all the 5 fine arts. But I want to go back while Dr. Russell's in his illumination. And God says, now look, you know, I'm going to give you the knowledge to do all these things. And if you do this for me, your reward will lie beyond the grave. And Jim and I were kicking this around this afternoon. We were thinking, well, Doc probably looked over his shoulder and said, well, God, you know, the last guy you promised that Jew, it didn't work out too good for him in the end.
These people killed him, man. Humankind killed him. All right, we're gonna take a break on that good levity right there.
Yeah, it's
all right, so go ahead.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, when we return, I'd like to address Deb Token's question.
Yeah, what we'll do when we return, as I said in the beginning, is we're going to come back. And so if you got questions, put them up. James will put them up after 3 minutes. Get yourself up, get your legs shaken out, glass of water, refresh, whatever you need. Take a couple minutes, and we're going to just put on some background music in the ocean for you. And James, if you want to turn that on, we'll be back in 3 minutes to answer any questions that you might have.
Very good.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We got a little bit of contemplative time, and I know we had a question before that. James, can you put that up? I didn't quite see that last question. All right. So a week or so back, either Jim or John made a brief comment about the line between the inner sensed illuminate and the outer sense personality. I once read that Saint Teresa was not always saintly.
I'd like to jump right in on that one. You know, we forget what the Russells are teaching here, and all mystics have taught us. You're not a mystic or illuminate or even a genius until you awaken that in you. You also have some of the human frailties that go along with being human and in a sensed body. Excuse me. That's the cat. Here's some examples. Moses, a mystic illuminate, murdered a man because he mistreated a slave, pulled out his sword and killed him. This is the man that wrote, "Thou shalt not murder." Paul or Saul, on the way to Manassas, or wherever he was traveling on the road to Manassas. Pardon me?
Damascus.
Yeah.
I thought it was Damascus, wasn't it?
He was on the road to Manassas because he was arresting and handing Christians over to the Romans to be imprisoned, tortured, or murdered. And he had an illumination. Now, the beauty of that statement is you don't have to be a perfect person in order to awaken the God light within you. You awaken the God light within you by being in a state of mind that the majority of the time you're thinking on that God light. You're desiring to know more about who you are. It doesn't matter who you were. It's who you become in that transition. They are, as it says biblically, literally, when you have the illumination, you are literally born again, a new person. So it's not a matter of was she worthy, because prior to becoming a saint, she did some questionable things. Yes, every living being on the planet is worthy of enlightenment, even me.
Right.
Wow, Jim.
So yeah, in terms of that, I know that Mother Teresa also had doubts at the end of her life about, you got to remember, she witnessed so much pain and suffering. You almost wonder if it was an imbalance, because you have to balance your life with beauty and love, and grieving and suffering are an important part. Your capacity for love and joy is equal to your capacity to grieve and suffer, and that's that balanced interchange. So Mother Teresa also subjected herself at the end, wrote the Pope questioning, was there a God? Why is there all this pain and suffering? So she witnessed a lot of pain and suffering, and we're patterned, as we talked about before. Everything is trying to become every other thing at the speed of what we call life, reproduction. Mm-hmm. And in terms of that, if you're around a bunch of pain and suffering and people sick and ill, it's going to start to wear on you. I always wonder how nurses do it. How do they keep that positive attitude, and thus Mother Teresa had her own struggles, just like Jim is saying, but that doesn't change that when you're in the light, you're in the light. It's a timeless light. It's not about time. It's not about how long you're there. It's about learning to desire to be there. And then you realize it becomes a part of your countenance as you build this in. So thank you for that question or that statement on Mother Teresa. She certainly was an amazing woman. Do we have any other questions, James? Okay, let's go to 174 and read that third paragraph there. Jim, you want to read that?
Page 174?
Yeah, third paragraph.
Sure. Yep. Higher knowledge means trying to discover what the greatest mind that ever lived meant by saying the kingdom of heaven is within, or I and my Father are one, or the Father dwelleth within me, or God is light, and God is love, and all such other teachings of that great mind. The fact that such teachings are not at first import in every cultural institution in the world is proof of the fact that our civilization is still too young to be ready for them. The great mass of human race still is in such a low intellectual level that it even resents the idea of the divinity of man, even though Jesus taught us very plainly when he said, I and my Father are one. What I am, you are, and what I do, you can also do. Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad very plainly told mankind in their separate ages exactly where to find God in his heaven. But countless millions of men still retain the pagan concept of heaven as being up there above the earth, instead of being within man. Many men still think of God as an objective being up there somewhere, who sits in judgment over his countless billions of people who come and go upon billions and trillions of earths like ours. 9/10 of the people today in today's world retain this inherited pagan concept of long past ages for man's primacy. Yeah, this is the transition, and it is. I don't feel, because of things that happened to me in my youth, I've always felt connected with a source. Now, I wouldn't have called it as a very young child God, it just presence. I know there are people that don't have that, but they can get it by simply living with that thought in your mind. I and my Father are one, and all that God is within me. And that we say it so lightly. Absolute divinity exists within you because in your core being, at cause, you are absolute divinity. And you are here to manifest absolute divinity. And that's a big jump. When you've been told all your life and through lifetimes that you're unworthy, that you're sinful, that you're God is angry with you, and all the other stories that go with those circumstances, it's hard to make the transition to think that not only is God not angry with me, God centers and loves me for the being that I am, even in my current imperfections. God loves me, and that's the beauty of finding Creator within. And to close it up, I agree with Russell's 100%. You will never find it outside of yourself.
John, you want to share on that?
Yeah, think about it. If God can love Jim,
yeah,
that tells me God can love anybody.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, man, if Jim can.
I was going to say, yeah, if he can, man.
That's good.
I did want to point out something in that paragraph that perhaps our audience could reflect on when they get some quiet time. When the Russell said that there are trillions, not trillion, a trillion, trillions of Earths out in the universe. And, we have our little planet, we have our civilization, we have the world as we know it. And if you could ever allow your mind to expand a little bit and say to yourself, okay, and like Leo told Jim and I, she said, boys, there's planets out there inhabited with nothing but Christ-like beings. And I'm like, man, that's got to be pretty awesome. And so anyway, it just helps us put into perspective where we are as a civilization. But remember this, and I want to give this a little segment of wisdom to our audience, that you are the most important thing in the universe. Your own development, your own understanding, your own awakening. And when that knowing comes of you experiencing your own divinity, your life will change, and it will change forever. And then you'll be able to look back and see things as they were, and then just look to the future with a totally different attitude and perspective in life.
Yeah, and you'll also be able to look out at all the rest of humanity and realize that potential is within them too. It really makes it much more comfortable and easy for me in my life to forgive people for things that I believe that are trespasses against themselves and against humanity. By understanding that I need to see the divine within them, especially when they don't.
Mhm. All right. Yeah, I find it fascinating also that they talk about countless billions of people and billions of and trillions of Earths like ours, which is again, is there life out there? Well, these illuminates saying yes, there is. Absolutely. Not only is there life out there, but as John said, there's Christ-like planets where people live in the state of love. So we can get there, guys. We can get there. It is something. And each and every one of you is the most important person on this podcast. And because without you, none of this would exist. And remember something, if God's omnipresent, and this is to me the order form in which I got to know God, or if I get in a hole, I go through that process. I first look to connect to omnipresence. That's nature, but it also represents every cell of your body. In order for God to be omnipresent, as Jim has said many times, behold thou the unity and light of me and the seeming separateness of the two lights of my divided thinking. See that I'm within all divided things, centering them, outside all changing things, controlling them. That means that if God's within all divided things, centering them, you're made up of trillions of photons make up a cell, billions of cells make up your body, and every one of those photons and cells is centered by all knowledge, all power, and all presence. You are God. You are made up God. We're all extensions of the one. So we all truly are one. We hurt one man. We hurt every man. We help ourselves and we help every man and woman out there. So that's why this is so important. And when you start to realize there's so much more than just us, so many people that have achieved more, yet I'm sure there are people that have achieved less. So it's not about a measuring stick. I think it's just about where do you want to be? Because, it's being laid out right here. It's like, do you want to be one with God? Because here's exact methodology that will show you how to do that if you build it and apply these principles. So I really like what we read. And Jim, thanks for carrying on there to that one. Now let's go to 175, the last paragraph there. John, you want to read it?
Oh, I do, man. I was hoping you were going to ask me to read that one, Ken.
What? You know what? You was the plan.
I was thinking after your brilliant review there, I thought, well, let's go ahead and end the broadcast. Kim summed it up beautifully, and we'll see you next Sunday.
My man.
Okay, on a serious note here.
Yes.
The modern illuminate, Mary Baker Eddy, has explained the misconception of sin by teaching that Jesus came into the world to save people from a belief in sin and instead of from sin.
Huge.
As the light of intelligence unfolds in man, he'll gradually know our universe and God's ways. God will work with you, but not for you, explains quite clearly that sin cannot exist in nature and that it is purely a man-made concept. Now, that one paragraph right there, Ken, if people could understand what's being said there, think of the freedom that they are giving themselves to be free from the thought of sin, being free that you are somehow affecting or interfering with God's ways and processes.
Right.
And so free yourself to know that you and God are one and that there is no such thing as sin. And it's just a concept, created by man thousands of years ago to control other men through fear and intimidation, the wrath of God, and so on. And so when these pagan belief systems can be abandoned slowly but surely, then the world will gain accordingly.
Beautiful.
Yeah, let me point out here that sin was actually the name for the moon in ancient times, and the moon in that name dealt with emotion, and it still does. We still call it has such terms as lunacy. So when we fall victim to emotion, the only thing that happens is an imbalance in thought and action is created with us and recorded within us, and it remains with us until we balance that thought or action. One of the other people asked in a question, well, are illuminates human? Yes, profoundly so. Now, John and I, as you know, had the privilege of living with one for 2 to 2.5 years. And she would be the first one to tell you She is human. They feel all the sense and desires that every other human being does. But what they know is they know without question their divinity. And knowing their divinity, they are able to put the body desires in their proper place and not fall victim to them. But that doesn't mean that they don't have body desires. They marry, they have intercourse, they have children, they get angry, and they balance it when their anger. And this is one of the most difficult. When I walked into the palace for the first time, John got there a couple of weeks before me, and I walked in. I was in this. Well, this illumined person here must be, holy, holy, holy. I need to walk softly and understand the majesty of this person. And Leah was the first one to put me correctly, because they know what you're thinking. She said, I'm a human being in the process evolving to my divinity. I have human frailties and faults. The difference is, and John will back this up, when she would fall victim to a human frailty or a thought, and it was very minor when she did, and she might snap at you about something out of impatience, she would almost immediately stop, correct herself, apologize, and come up and give you a hug and say, let's move on. What we tend to want to do is think of ourselves as less than. The divine light in you is not less than the divine light in Christ or any other illumined being or mystic on the planet. It's just they are more aware of that divine light within them than you are. That's why no matter how advanced these mystics become, they love their fellow man in humanity, because they know who you are and what your potential is.
All right.
Ken, I can attest to that fact personally that Jim had just shared. My very first day at Swananoa Palace, I woke up, and the day before, Leo gave me a pair of Dr. Russell's slippers. And man, I was so proud to have those. And I got up, I don't know, it was about 7:45 maybe or something, and or 8 o'clock, and the damn door rang. So I ran upstairs and I opened the big doors with my slippers and pajamas on, and I said, "Hey folks, how are you doing?" Da, da, da. And I said, "Come on in," right? And out of nowhere I heard, "Johnny, would you come here, please?"
Yeah.
And I walked up the steps and up the hallway there, and I got my first ass chewing by a cosmic conscious illumination. Telling me that this is a business. We don't answer the door in slippers, and we just don't let anybody in, and all that and so on. So, but Jim hit the nail on the head. We're all human. We're in a body, for God's sakes. And we're subject to emotions and feelings just like everybody else. So, but anyway, I'm just saying that I firsthand experienced Jim's great dissertation there.
Yes, I love it. And the thing that I really relate to there is that that very last line, which is, it talks about, explains quite clearly that the sin cannot exist in nature. That is purely a man-made concept. And it's like, try and violate gravity, right? Try and jump off a roof and pray to God that you're not going to hit the ground, and God's not going to set God's laws aside. The laws are already set. It's all set. There are no breaking it. You can beyond that, you cannot go, right? There's the Alpha and the Omega. Beyond that, you cannot go. Those 9 octaves that we're going to end up talking about. You can't even go there in the building of planets, in the building of solar systems. There are rules and guidelines that you can that have a beginning and an end, and beyond that and past that, you cannot go. So, belief in sin means that Christ died because man can crucify man. And if you think about how much negative repercussions came from that action of killing Christ for 300 plus years or more, if not more, they were killing Christians in the name of Christ, trying to just stomp it out. Why? Because a man said God is love and light. Be loving, be light, be light, be love. That's why we killed him. So what primal state was mankind in to be so threatened by a man that was just talking about be kind, be loving, come from your genius. You are all sons and daughters of the Most High. Be one. How do you be one? Go to nature. That's what it says. There's nothing evil in nature, so how can there be anything evil in God? Evil is a man concept, right? That's the hardest part. But Jesus died, proved that there is no sin. You can't sin against God, no matter what you do or how catastrophic. And think about the greatest Illuminati to ever live. We crucified him. Man, if we were, and we've paid the price for that, as we were going to write. You're seeing the writings here. For 1900 years, the cost of that cost mankind. We're still in a barbaric state trying to come out, but we're also ready in a way we've never been because of this electronic age. This message can get out there. It's not just limited to going up to the Blue Ridge Mountains and finding the palace. Now we have a podcast and we're sharing it. And everybody here is the future of this message. Stay with this, and you're going to see your life change dramatically in such a positive way. Yes, John.
I just had a wonderful thought. I was thinking,
yes, sir.
Now there's Jesus delivering the Sermon on the Mount, right?
Yep.
Now, can you imagine if he had an 8-foot by 10-foot poster of the Grand Symphony of Creation over your shoulder, and he has a little pointer, and he's trying to explain to the people at the time, say, now listen, here are the many mansions I was telling you about that are in my Father's.
Well, I do believe at the time he said there are many things I'd like to tell you, but you're not ready yet ready
there
to
you
bear.
go.
Yeah, I'll just show you instead.
The Russells are teaching us that now great multitudes of humanity are ready to bear and understand this.
We are never going to get to this lesson, guys.
No,
right.
Sorry.
So we have to keep moving. We got about another minute or so to before we take another break. But let's go ahead and go to 176.
Didn't James say we had some more questions?
Yeah. Is there any more questions, James?
I would just like to say in one sentence, Margaret, I agree with both of your statements.
Okay, so some people, okay, James, you got to leave them up, brother. Some people overgive, which in itself might be an imbalance. Oh, 100% is a violating the principle of rhythmic balanced interchange. I love that, Margaret. I totally agree. You know, a giver should only give to a giver. It's a giver's responsibility to not give to takers. There are too many takers in the world, and they will suck you dry because they think you should give them everything. You only give to givers. That's a lesson I've learned on down the road. Certainly we all have given to so many when you're on this path, but it's really important to follow the law of rhythmic balance interchange as Margaret is laying out there, which means that if you don't give to takers, we stop giving to takers. We see the God in them. We know they have just as much God in them as that's in us, but we stop giving to them if they just take. And that's where, you look in the mirror. Are you a giver or a taker? You can look right now. There's a mirror right in front of you. It's called the mirror of life. Are you a giver or a taker? I know that I'm a giver, and I've learned to be a giver because of this message, and I've learned to live in love and understand that love is the guiding principle for everything that happens. And therefore, if I come from that loving place, everything will be as it's supposed to be. If I trust in the balance of love, the rhythmic balance interchange, everything will be as it's supposed to be. That's a great comment. And you guys want to comment on that?
Well, there was another question that
I agree.
There was.
Okay. Any other questions there, James? How do we keep our fulcrum balance during all this political fighting? Go ahead, John. Did you say you can answer that?
Yes. What I would say to Susan is this. I think it was John Lennon that wrote "Let It Be." Was it him, Ken?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So all things like politics, okay? And that's where the rule of thumb comes in. You don't talk about religion and politics in a social environment. So, but this political fighting, yes, it's uncomfortable. All right. And you're like, well, why do we have this, so much difference? How can we be so polarized in opposite directions? But to give Susan peace of mind, what I would say is that all things will take care of themselves.
Yep.
And just let it be. Try to keep your emotions in balance. Hold on to what you know as your truth, your understanding, your interpretation, and just be true to yourself, and try not to attach any emotional thing in either direction. Just try to stay as close to that fulcrum as you possibly can. Just love the people for who they are, whether you agree or disagree. But, at some point in time, we'll all get together. It'll all work itself out.
Yep. The planet didn't get here by mistake, right? It's a creating universe, not a created. Nothing's done. Another thing I would say on that note too is, how do you feed the starving children in Africa? How do I help the starving children in Africa while I'm living in California, LA, or Virginia, wherever I might be, right? How do I help those children? By being a good man or woman where you're at. That's how you maintain the fulcrum, is carrying that light where you're at, knowing that if I help one person, I help all people. That's how we create that, stay in that fulcrum. And therefore, it's just like John's saying, if I can't do anything about feeding those starving children, I certainly can live a good life here right now and be a representation of God and the love of God. And that will help those starving children, because we're all one, right? If we're all one, that means if I do good, they're going to get good. That's how we change the world, is by maintaining our God light. That is exactly a great answer. All right, let's go to 176 and read that. One more question here. What is the Russell's view of the holographic universe? Do these universes exist in the holosphere, or is the simulacrum not part of this? Simulacrum? Okay. That's a new word for me.
It's seeming universe. Let me hold this up to the camera and see if you can pick it up. This is the mirrored cube. See if I can get it out there in there. Now, when you look at this mirrored cube, you see infinite reflections into infinity that do not exist. We all know that if this was unfolded, it's a simple flat mirror. But when you reflect those mirrors upon each other, they create the illusion of infinite multiplicity. That's what this holistic universe theory is about. Don't get lost in the illusion. You can imagine anything into existence within this illusionary sphere. Now, see that we live in this. This is not just a toy. It reminds us who we are. We live in a holographic, mirror reflective universe that reflects God's desire through nature and our desire within nature, and gives us that which we create. If you want to change it, change your thinking, and know that you will not be drawn into situations that will cause you difficulty and trouble. Just know it. The answer to all these things is that wouldn't happen to me. If you want to live in an infinite holographic with infinite possibilities of good and bad universe, go for it. That's not the one I live in. I live in the
simple. We got to take a break.
Yeah, go ahead, John. I just wanted to say to Sharon that be patient, because in the later units, when we get into the science, the Russells will scientifically explain the holographic universe that she's speaking of.
Yep.
In quite detail.
Yeah, one more thing too, Sharon, that I would say is, and I've said it before, is if you look in the room that you're sitting in, and you're sitting by a desk or your bed or a couch, or you got furniture in your house, you ever wonder how that fits in your eyeball? Because it's light. It's just light waves. That's all it is. As science tells you, it's in constant motion. There's just moving so fast. We think it's dense, but if it was dense, it would never fit in our eyes. It could not transmit from what it is into our eyeball to create an image in our brain. That's, to me, how I know it's holographic. It's a light wave universe, which is what we talk about. Okay, we're going to be back in 3 minutes. We'll take a 3-minute break, and then we'll be right back. Thank you, guys. So if you have any more questions, feel free to ask them.
Hey, Jim. Oh, I'm sorry, James. It just dawned on me that after seeing that background, that must be where the term becoming unhinged came from.
How about that placement on the Kimberly taking a picture of that book at Stonehenge? Isn't that cool?
I know. There's
cool.
our fearless leader demonstrating it, man. Beautiful.
Yeah, man. She was so lit up. There's so many great pictures of her out there. It's really wonderful. All right, guys, we got to get rolling here because we are definitely falling behind. Is there any more questions that really that need answering? Okay, so we're at 176. Let's go. Let's read the first two paragraphs. Who would like to do that? John or Jim? I guess it's
all right. I'll jump in there on 176 at the top.
Yep, first two paragraphs, correct.
All right, here we go. When mankind does know God's ways and processes of creation, he will know that God cannot possibly be sinned against. Man can sin only against himself by hurting himself or his neighbor. Imagine, for example, a man sinning against gravity by defying it or breaking its law. He would but hurt himself, for he could not hurt gravity, and gravity would have no reason for being wrathful about it. Such early conceptions of man gradually disappear as higher spiritual knowledge and God awareness comes into human comprehension. As man slowly comprehends that God is inviolate law, which no man can hurt or sin against.
Wow.
You want to read the next paragraph with it? It kind of goes with it.
Yes.
Okay.
The same principle applies to the ideal of a wrathful God. That concept is scientifically impossible. Wrath is a human emotion. It is one of the many changing physical expressions. God is not physical, and he is unchanging. His one spiritual, unchanging emotion is the ecstasy of love given out from his light. It is scientifically unnatural for that flow of love to be uninterrupted by base emotions, as it would for the flow of light from our sun to be interrupted by a flow of dark. Wrath and vengeance are ugly emotions which stem from hate and produce fear. The more the human race progresses towards a knowledge of our universe of God's processes of creation, the more it will comprehend the hate, wrath, fear, and vengeance cannot issue from love, which God is. Amen to that.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
It's like, okay, people, it's time to wake up. Here's the real God, not the one you heard about, not the one you've been reading about. All right. This is the real one who knows nothing. And but what love is, remember, Ken, we talked about that several units back. What is love? Love is not this Pollyanna state of people holding their hands together and walking around with the daisy and white gowns.
Nope.
It's not that passivity. Okay. Love is an interaction between the two lights of our Creator, the divided two lights of creation. And it's the rhythmic balanced interchange of those two lights, which gives creation its essence. And just like we just read, there is nothing that you can do as a human to ever interrupt God's balanced universe. You couldn't affect gravity if you tried to. You know, even an atomic weapon can't affect gravity. Gravity controls that as it happens. So, again, people will find freedom. We'll find freedom in that, to be free of fear, and be free of hate and vengeance and all the ugly emotions that go with that.
Yeah, those emotions are the things that we're supposed to put in check. That's what this message is all about. When you enter into that state, it's that, as Jim and John have stated, even the great Illuminates can fall into that sensed being. That's what we're here for. That's part of our journey. But this gives me great things to look out for. Hate, wrath, fear, vengeance cannot be if I'm with God. If I'm in a loving state with God, I can't be in those emotions. There are no negative emotions in love. In love, it's telling you right here, which I think is so important, is one spiritual, unchanging, second paragraph, James. Is one unchanged? About 3 lines down. The second paragraph, go one up. One more up, the same principle. Okay, yeah, right there. One a little bit up, one more sentence. There you go. His one spiritual, yes, thank you for the mouse. His one spiritual unchanging emotion is the ecstasy of love. So God's is telling me the perpetual state of God's mind is ecstasy. The ecstasy that comes from the expression of love. Love is the desire force to manifest, and God uses light that John just described, the duality of light, to manifest the expression of that love. But it's just the expression, and the expression is not love. It's an extension of love. Love never departs. Love is. It isn't in parts. It is a constant energy. It's the undivided light, not the luminosity. The undivided light is love. So to me, it was really important, especially when I go into meditation, to remember that God's state of mind and how I can go there just by desire to feel exceedingly content and fulfilled. That's why we walk in nature and talk to God. That's a desire that there I can be exceedingly content and fulfilled in a beautiful waterfall or a forest or a canopy of trees or a mountaintop or an ocean or a lake. That stillness in nature, right? That is the love light of God. That's all throughout nature. You cannot disrupt nature. I really love that, but I also like that I can relate to the state of God's mind, because I do know what it's like to be exceedingly content and fulfilled in meditation or listening to a piece of Beethoven or Mozart or looking at some beautiful art. I can feel exceedingly content and fulfilled. You know, I've never looked at some of the work of Walter and Lyle Russell, and let alone the artwork that's in the museum, and thought, oh man, I need new tires. Oh my God, my car needs a car wash. When you look at that artwork, you're entrapped. You're just encaptured by it. It's a rapture. You start to dance. You feel the ecstasy of beauty of creating an art. And every one of us has that art within us. Nobody's created anything that we can't create. We can all do and are supposed to do the works that Walter and Russell did, and even more. That's what these lessons are about, to help the world go further. That's what we're doing right now, guys. So this is an important process. Jim, you got anything on that?
Ken?
Yes.
Jim, if I may, I'd like to just make a quick comment. I don't mean to cut you off there, but Ken, along the lines of what the Russells are saying here, I want to think about, God doesn't play favorites.
Yep.
And to just think of the implication, in Christianity that, God sacrificed his only begotten son. Well, what's that say about the rest of the heathens of us out here? Is there no hope? What is our purpose? Why are we here, right?
Yep.
And so these are the kind of things that these teachings will free people from. These belief systems of this God that's out there somewhere that plays favorites and so on and so forth. And we are all one. There is no two separate things in the universe. So anyway, I wanted to just point that out.
Jim.
Well, they had mentioned in earlier lessons that the inwinding and the outwinding of all wave bodies, give and re-give, is the balanced statement of love. That's what love is. Give for equal re-giving. And so that's what's going on. And I love the fact that you guys have brought up gravity and such natural, eternal things within nature, because it's important to remind ourselves of those things that are permanent and unchangeable, and that you can't stop gravity. You can't turn it off or on. You can't deny it. You can't. Nor can you upset it in any way, because it is the representative with the stillness within all things that is the divine universal one, and the divine in you. So when you begin to understand that, the first thing you learn how to do is forgive on a much higher scale than you ever did before, because you can't be what you're trying to be in discovering your inner divinity if you hold on to resentments and judgments. This has been a revelation for me in the last 10 years of my life. So much of my early life, I had resentments and judgments. And I realized they were limiting me in discovering my divine within. And so we need to all work on getting past that and understand that universal law and the presence of God is eternal, unchanging, unlimited love, which is not an emotion. It's a state of being that the universe is.
Ken, I wanted to, and Jim was touching on it there. I wanted to make a separation for our audience. That ecstasy is not an emotion, and Jim just said it. It's a state of being.
Yeah.
So don't confuse the two. You know, when you're in embodiment and you have hormones, that's what causes you to have emotions. But God is emotionless.
That's right.
I mean, think about it. If God had a temper, like they try to describe in biblical teachings and so on, it wouldn't be a very good place.
Boy, especially after we killed Christ, probably would have wiped us out a long time ago, man.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine?
I send a messenger and you kill him.
That inner voice.
All right, guys, let's keep moving on because we got lots to do. All right, so let's go. Let's go over to 177 and read that second paragraph there. We began. Who would like to read that?
I can get it.
Yeah,
we begin to give that higher knowledge of who and what God is and where to find him, and what heaven is and where to find that also, and what mind is and where to find that. In the very first units of this course, in the very first units of the course, and we will continue to reveal God and his zero universe throughout the rest of the course. And this comes alive beautifully as we go into the science. As a basic of the higher knowledge you are thus receiving, we have given you the Message of the Divine Elliot by Walter Russell, which is the science of the universe. And God will work with you, but not for you, by Leo Russell, which is the science of the divinity of man. These books and this course of study are given you for the sole purpose of helping you unfold your own spiritual nature too. That's all I can say. To that point of illumination, when you will either gradually or suddenly become aware of God's presence within you. This is the highest goal any man can attain, and all men can attain it in the measure of their depth of desire for its attainment.
Wow.
So there we go. And you can't say it any plainer than that. It's freedom. They're delivering you from judgment and guilt and fear to freedom and empowerment and love. And I can't think of a greater gift to give to your fellow man than that.
Yeah, and I really like that desire force is the key, right? It's telling me that it's based on the depth of my desire, not just depth, but desire. So desire force is desire controls gravity. If you think about it, if you desire something in a proper manner, an idea, a concept, a concerto, music, an art piece of artwork, it comes to you in a timeless flash through desire. But if you try and think of, I'm going to paint this or paint that or paint this way or paint that way, you're going to be sitting there forever because it's an infinite elements of colors. But if you get a flash of concept by a desire force of going to that art, going to that music, going to that architect, that place that you might desire to create from, that's when you go into meditation. And desire to me is the key. Desire force in life brings everything in. So even when something negative happens in my life, I realize that I am the force that attracted that. So when someone bad comes in or somebody that really does some muck in my life, I don't wonder why they did what they did. I wonder, what is it about me that attracted them in my life? Mm-hmm. How did I allow that energy into my life when I try and live in a rhythmic balance exchange? And desire is desire to be like-minded, like Jim and John. This is my family right here. And I desired to find them. It took me 28 years. But when I found them, I found my family. I found men and women very, that are my kind. You guys, this is my family right here. I'll tell you that right now. And we've worked hard, right? Desire force is there because you can hear the relayance of this message. It comes from a desire to know this message and live this message. That's why we can sit here for hours explaining paragraphs. Okay, anything else on that?
I'm good.
Okay, Jim, you want to go to 170? Let's see, wait a minute. 178, second paragraph. Did we read that?
No.
No. Sorry. Yeah, go there.
Pardon me. Clear my throat here. Knowledge cannot be obtained through sensed observations. One can merely be informed of effects of motion that way. Information is not knowledge. Even if it will help to make a better television or a jet plane, reasoning from such sense conclusion misleads one into forming baseless theories and postulates which have no resemblance to nature whatsoever. That is what is the matter with science of today. It is composed of hundreds of theories and postulates which will not only not fit together in one consistent whole, but many contradict each other. That is also what is the matter with our civilization as a whole. Its educational ideals is to stress the physical and ignore moral, spiritual, and the moral and the spiritual. Our entire educational system stultifies the genius who is born with higher knowledge, and many parents of genius children weep because of being thus afflicted. This is also why the conclusions of mathematics is unreliable.
There you go, Terrence Howard.
This expansion is
Sorry,
necessary.
I had to throw that in.
This explanation is necessary for you and other enlightened ones in order to transform you.
Oh, no, Jim, let's share on that paragraph. Let's just stay on that. We're going to pop over to 179 in a second.
Okay. Well, their point is that the majority of humanity naturally would build a school system that teaches us to memorize and repeat and judges intellect based on that. Genius is not one that's interested in memorizing and repeating. The genius mind is interested in exactly what Ken was talking about. They go to source and deep thought and desire, and then through that desire, they manifest things that are new to humanity, be it an object or a body of a thing, or even an emotional expression or a book or great literature, straight from source. There's no physicality, and that's why when you look at the thing that the geniuses of the world gave to us, they're remarkable in how they uplift humanity, because we've come to know something that we can't find on our own at this point. They're messengers of light, and they give it to us, and they're not always perfect people.
Yeah, I really like what it's telling me here is that the difference between sensed observation and true creation. You can look at a chair and go, I'm going to make a better chair. Well, that's a sensed observation. That's not an idea, right? It's just like they refer up above this paragraph about the automobile of 1904 compared to the automobile today. Nobody created anything. They just observed how to make faster, slicker, more aerodynamic, but there's no idea behind that. None of that is created. It's a sensed observation, sort of like the first boat, if you will, in the caveman. If you think about a log floating down the river, and the caveman sitting there drinking some water, looking up, seeing a big old log floating down the river, and think, hey, if I was sitting on that log, I wonder if I'd float down the river. Now you got your first boat. That's not an idea. That's a sensed observation from a necessity to move easier and free myself from having to walk, right? So this is telling me, don't think when you observe something, you create an idea, because you haven't. An idea comes from one of the 5 arts, or one of the greatest arts any of us can do, guys, is to uplift another human being. That is an art. We call it philosophy. When you share your knowledge and you share your experience, and if it awakens or ignites another human being to be better, to search for more, that is art too. Also, remember that. So philosophy to me is an art also. One of the greatest things any of us can do is to help another human being. There's no greater act. that any human being could do other than to help another human being. So it's helping me to understand, don't get caught up thinking because you got sense observation to make a better item, a better tool, that you've created something, you have it, you've sensed something. So in learning the difference between sensing and creating became so important to me, because we are creators, as we're in a creating universe, not a created. So sensed observation is not creating. John, you got anything? Yeah. Oh, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
I'd just say one of my little fun hobbies now is I like to go out on YouTube in the morning when I first get up after my meditation, and I'll turn it on and I look at people that have experienced near death. They've had near death experiences. And one of the most fascinating thing about across the board, with few exceptions, is how these people that cross over and find themselves at one with Creator and experience that universality of the presence of Creator and themselves within Creator, they are marveled as they get their life review and they find out that some of the simplest acts that they performed in life were seen as the greatest and most loving and beautiful things, far beyond the great things that they thought they should receive praise for. And so think about that. As you're out in your day, you have the opportunity to do the simplest things: a nod of the head, a smile, how you doing? Yep. Talk to people.
How you doing?
And when you have the opportunity to reach out and do some little thing to help them. I was walking across the parking lot this morning, going into the store, and a man was just finishing up unloading his cart. And I said, well, here, I'll take the cart back in for you. Simple act, but it made his day. You could see it in his face. This was an elderly man who was in a handicapped space. And I'm sure the thought of having to walk that cart either back to the store or into the rack was daunting for him. And that simple act of love made his day. I saw it in his face. And so
hey, Jim, I got one question for you. Did you ask him, hey, how you doing? How you doing?
But what Jim failed to share with us is that when the guy turned his back, Jim took that cart and put it in the back of his van and took it home with him.
I wouldn't do that to my soul.
There's some chickens around, man. Get a lot of chickens.
That's right.
Basket, man. It ain't going nowhere. All right, so we are kind of at the end. I wish we could keep going. I think Kimberly's going to kill us because we only got halfway through this lesson. But is there any questions? I just want to wrap up one thing here. John, you want to read 179, first paragraph, please?
First paragraph, or
yeah.
Amen to that.
Okay,
this we know,
because I was reading the very last one that carried over to 180. Is it possible for me to do that?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, actually, that's fine.
Okay. So
anyway, we're going to be at the bottom of 179, last paragraph of 179.
Yes. And it carries over to 180. So here we go.
Perfect.
It is even more strange that we're able to tell it to you, for all down the ages, the illumined mystics have been unable to tell to others in comprehensible words that which was so clear to them. This you know without question. For ages, the mystics, as James will slide down for me, the mystics have told of the divided and the undivided without the slightest success in giving the meaning of those words to man. The brilliant thinking of a century of scientists has never even remotely connected these words of the mystics, the divided and the undivided, with the universal zero fulcrum of mind and light waves which emerged from it. So, the science that we have today, the terminology, Ken, the language that we have, we're blessed, because in the days of the mystics and Christ and so on, there wasn't a scientific language. It wasn't even spoken of. So we're fortunate to have an awareness of science, so that we can, and as we've said early on, Russell said, if you can read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe. And it's that simple. Yeah,
we're going to show that's exactly what we're being shown, and that's what we're doing right now. Jim, go ahead and read that second paragraph our first paragraph on 180, would you? We'll wrap up on that.
As far back as the Bhagavad Gita, we have been explicitly informed of what light, of that light which is God, without ever having conveyed any meaning to man during these eons. Jesus also said to us, God is light, God is love. Man has interpreted his words as meaning the incandescence of suns, and has built an objective God of limited form while still teaching an omnipresent one. The time is far away, however,
Is
when
not
man
far
will,
away.
is not far away, however, when man will discover and comprehend that man's self is as formless and non-objective as God is. All of that, all.
No, that's good, Jim. That's good.
That's good.
That's good.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
Go ahead.
so,
Sure,
so therein lies the whole reason for these lessons. These two illuminates, and by the way, we always have mystics on the planet. We don't always acknowledge them, but they're always present. And we had these two mystic illuminates on the planet to deliver this new science for this age to humanity. They will be reading these books 1,000 years from now, because the knowledge is that expansive and that complete in here, and this will lead to the uplifting of civilization. So it's profoundly meaningful to me to understand what we were given here and the opportunity that's presented to us.
100%. All right. Is there any questions? Anybody got any questions they want to ask? I see Karen said, so to use your thinking to set an intent for good and creating group alignment for this, is it like a baby step for becoming and understanding who we are?
Absolutely.
You betcha, Karen.
It's a step on the path up the mountain. Absolutely. And it also lights the way.
Not only who we are, but what we are.
That's right. Which is the cause of all. What we are causes everything, not who we are, right? Who we are is we are one with God. What causes everything is what we are, what we end up deciding to be, right? It is our choice. And now we're going through some lessons that are telling us we can be godlike if we desire to be godlike. We are God to the extent in which we desire God. We know God to the extent in which we live daily, moment to moment with God. That's how we know God. That's how we know our oneness. Mr. Bonzo sent me a picture just the other day. He's out in his yard. He created a solar system in his yard. I mean, that's the kind of stuff. That's God talk, man. That's it. I mean, he's got the whole solar system sitting out in his front yard. Go
and
ahead,
the asteroid belt.
Including the asteroid. Yeah.
I was listening to an inspiring piece of music from Constance Demby called Eternal Night. And it so inspired me that morning that I just began, and I got all these beautiful colored glass things and stainless bulbs and marbles and different things.
Next
and
week, you have to send that picture. Send that picture to James, so next week we can see it. But yes, to get go on.
All right.
So it was amazing. It was beautiful.
Jim came over to see me this morning, but I figured, well, if I created the solar system, I can take it apart, and I did. And unfortunately, Jim couldn't see it firsthand, but it was really cool.
There you go. There's God right there. Yeah. You created a solar system and you took it apart. That's exactly what God does. That's God's light right there working. So we have to see a picture of that, guys, because if you see John's driveway, you have to imagine like a gray DG dirt that compresses down. So it's really beautiful, and the way it looks, it offsets. I was so impressed. The only thing I could say is that's awesome, man. That is just awesome.
Well, Ken, when I showed my Karen that, I asked her to come out of the house, and I said, honey, now this is going to surprise you. So before I let her see it, I said, look, I'll go ahead and sign the papers before you look. To get me committed, I said, I'll sign the papers in advance.
Yeah, man. Well, if you start talking about living on other planets, you might. If one of those planets is your home planet, start talking about Uranus being your home planet. I don't know.
Yes.
Because that would be your planet, would be Uranus. That would be
Yeah.
your plan, Mazel. All right. So James is asking, do we want to share upcoming events? Yes, James. Let's go ahead and talk about the next lesson. We didn't quite get through all of 9 today, so we will be wrapping up on 9, the 11th, and try and dip into 10. As you guys know, we're trying to do a course every month. Every there's 12 units. So we're trying to do a unit every single month. So we will catch up a little bit. I'm sure Kimberly will be back, so she'll help us kick in gear a little bit stronger. But I really enjoyed this session. So I knew it was a long one. It's 21 pages. That's why I didn't know if we were going to get through it. And this, as it says here, the quote from what we read was the next 12 lessons. That was what John opened up with. Will be devoted to giving you more intensive comprehension of the higher knowledge of God's invisible universe. And what that means is that every page we read is taking each and every one of us into that knowledge of how God's universe works and how we can become co-creators in the moment we're in with God to uplift this world and make it a better place. That's what we're here to do. And we're sharing the light of love that we've learned, and therefore anybody can have it. And when you have it, you can have little stories like solar systems in your driveway. To me, that's pretty significant. If somebody does that once in their lifetime, you'd go, oh, wow, that's crazy. But we're talking about, as it's a creating universe, we are all creating every single day. And quite frankly, I always say every thought is like a brushstroke of a painting of the image of your life. So if your thoughts are negative, your brushstrokes, you know what I mean? Your painting is going to look ugly and dark. But if your thoughts are of the light and desiring to be of that love, then the painting, the image of your life will become a happy, joyful life full of light and love and color. So, and that's really the truth. That's why, we call it a thought life. And the term thought life is something that I relate to all the time. How's my thought life right now, God? I've been thinking a little bit of scary thoughts or materialistic thoughts. And so I'm getting caught up. God, can you be with me and help me stay aligned with your omnipresence? Can you help me feel the beauty of your nature that's all around me? These are the petitions that I make consistently. And I always want to have those triggers that keep me connecting to that source. So I do feel that oneness. And Kimberly Faith is going to be speaking coming up August 24th. My love and my girl is going to be talking, and it's going to be great, man. It's about the cosmic romance. So I'm very excited. I hope you guys can tune in and know that there's going to be just an amazing breakdown of love and the balance of it, how it interacts, what it looks like, and how to recognize it in your own life, and how to live the law of love as opposed to the law of man. We got a Tesla conference coming up here next week, the 7th, 7, 11, 24, going through to the 11th. Yes, I'm sorry, 7th to 11th. And that's 2024. So that's going to be in New Mexico. Kimberly and Karen are going to be speaking on there. Karen Elkins, who does all our graphic work and is here on one of our co-podcasters, is going to be there speaking, and so is Kimberly. So that'll be exciting. I think they're speaking Thursday night if you wanted to tune in. I think each day you can buy a Zoom pass for like $20. So if you want to tune into Kimberly and Karen, that might synergize more of what we're talking about. They're going to be talking about the Russells and their work. And I have a retreat coming up. Is that what that is? Are you? Yeah, I've got a retreat coming up in September from the 22nd to the 27th. I'll be dealing with people in a very intimate, private kind of atmosphere. It's a 4-bedroom house off of a creek in the forest. It's absolutely beautiful. We're going to be doing workshop on how to deal with addictionism, how it affects our lives on all levels, covers the spectrum of all addictions rather than just limiting it to alcoholism. I refer to it as addictionism, which I believe is rampant in this world between social media and pornography, all those electronic devices and stuff that we do, combined with a world that's telling us, who you are is what car you drive or what home you own. And learning to not have to live or be in the mercy of that world completely unsatisfied. Finding true satisfaction comes from close personal relationships and expressing love as much as you can in those relationships. That's all we're going to take with us is love. That's all we get here is love, an opportunity to love. That's what we're here for, is to love. So I hope you guys can join us next week. Anybody else got any comments they want to make? John, Jim, you got anything you want to say? Okay, we're wrapping
I'm
up.
good.
Okay, you guys, thanks so much for attending. Unless there's some questions, we'll wrap out of here. James, we got any questions? Oh, there's one more comment. Let's see what it is. I'm actually almost keeping up with the comments all of a sudden. How do you like them bananas?
Wow.
Oh, Rita. He
Wow.
creates worlds. Ha ha. Oh, that's Rita. She's a doll. Okay. Margaret, thank you. Dana, thank you guys. Rita, thank you. You guys have been great. Sharon, Susie, thanks so much for showing up. Deb and Sharon. Oh, we got Sharon. Margaret, of course, already did. Susan did that. Deb. All right. Thank you guys for being here. We'll look forward to more of the same. We had a pretty good audience tonight. I think we're up in the 60 realm, so that's good. That's really good for what we're doing. Appreciate everybody's time. We hope you feel the growth. Come back to us next week. We'll open up with questions after meditation again. I think that question thing worked pretty good, don't you guys? That we peppered the questions in there. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing, and appreciate everybody being here. And thank you guys again. Have a great night, and we'll look forward to next week.